Got a review on the ReadyLift for the Ram 1500. It's the ReadyLift 4-inch suspension. This is the code on it. As you see, it's the ReadyLift box. The problem with the 4-inch suspension on the four-wheel drive unit, it all went on there, and I like the look of it. But a couple of things that I would point out is, one is they have a hole drilled in the tube right there where this goes into. Seems like they could have just put a bracket on there and left that tube solid. That hole will allow water to fill up inside the tube right here, and you can see it's extended down right now, but if enough water got in there, you were doing deep water rides, water would back up into your system, your, I don't want to call it bearing, but your bushing system there. And of course, internal is not painted, so it's going to cause rust. I filled mine with some black RTV gasket maker, basically. So not the biggest problem in the world, but that was the first thing I noticed that was kind of bad. Now, for the worst part is, jack this thing back up again and get the tires off the ground. Okay. That full droop, the suspension comes down enough that the CV boots rub. And if you can see right there on the fork, it's rubbing there, and it's also rubbing the bottom of the lower control arm. So it's literally laying on it right now. You can see the boot right now doesn't have any stripes on it on the edges of the rib. Watch what happens when I spin the tire a few times. Now this is at straight. It does it worse whenever you turn the wheel and stuff like that. So now I have rubbing across the axle there, and you can see it right here really good, how that rib right there has a nice rub on it, and that's just from me turning the wheel. Of course, if you're off-roading in the dirt and grime, that's not going to help. From this angle, you can see it almost rubs right there, but when I get underneath here, you can see where it really rubs. Okay, it's hitting the fork of the strut pretty heavy, and then it's hitting right there on that area of the lower control arm, UCA, and it's also hitting right there. It's hard to see, but it's hitting another spot, and the spot here is actually rubbing as well. So 1, 2, 3 of the ribs are actually rubbing, and that's in the straight position. This is on both sides, so it doesn't make a difference. See if I can get the tire to turn. Okay, so now in the turn position, you can see it's hitting this side of, this is all the way turned. It is the center rib that was already rubbing. This one right here is rubbing this side of the lower control arm, right next to where your wheel lock hits. Obviously, you can see the wheel lock hits harder. It doesn't hit center anymore now that it's raised up as well. So in this position, it hits there. Now it's clearing the fork, but when you turn it the opposite direction, bear with me a second, I'm by myself doing this underneath the truck, jack stands and all that here. Seems to be as far as I can get it to turn right now, but with it turned like this, as far as it goes, now you see even that top part of the boot's hitting the strut. That one's hitting the strut for sure hard, and this one down here is hitting the strut. Only thing I think is to have to carve the strut out, or I mean, sorry, not the strut, but the lower control arm. Had to carve the lower control arm out to prevent that from happening. All right, get up underneath here one last time, and I'll show you this side. Video's a little bit more tough to see, but you can actually physically see it's laying on top of the control arm in 1, 2, 3 ribs, and then these two here are hitting the strut. And of course, driving down the road doing this, it won't take but half a mile or less, and it will cut a hole right into that boot, and then that boot's going to be gone, and so is your CVs, because they're going to get packed full of sand and dirt. I spoke to the company about it when I first installed it, and they told me, well, you can't overlift the truck, and you also can't underlift it. You have to lift it just right. Well, it's a stock Ram 1500, and everything on it was stock. I installed everything exactly to specs. I set it on the ground before I tightened all the bolts and everything, but yet it's rubbing. And then they also said, well, you need to get the proper alignment done, and all that should solve it, and it won't rub. Well, it's still rubbing. You can see my alignment. This is their recommendations, and this is what they did for me. 0 zeros, 2.9 on the casters. I mean, almost identical to what their recommended alignment specs are. So ReadyLift, we have a bit of a situation here. For me, I don't do a lot of off-roading, so I'll keep that in mind. It's a pain in the butt to put this lift on too, and last thing I want to do is have to spend 6 hours taking it apart again just to set it back down and shift the kit back. But I would have liked to have known that this lift is too tall for it to use the lower control arm, and you really should go to a full-blown kit if you're going to try to go 4 inches. 3 inches maybe will work, and I'm pretty sure if you just did the strut, just put the spacer up above the strut, that would work as well. But apparently 4 inches is just too much for the four-wheel drive. Tolerances on the lower control arm.